Learn English through story. A dangerous affair. There's a certain kind of darkness that exists between two people when their love turns illicit. It's not the darkness of secrecy alone, but the deep, consuming void of moral conflict, where choices blur between passion and peril. This was the kind of darkness Sophie Devereux found herself sinking into, and she was not sure how or if she could ever emerge from it unscathed. Sophie lived in the city of Aldridge, a place caught between its old world charm and the rapid modernization of the 1920s. The clamor of progress filled the streets, yet behind the closed doors of its elite circles, life was governed by age-old propriety and the expectations of marriage, family, and reputation. Sophie, at 34, was the wife of Charles Devereux, a prominent industrialist, and mother to a son. Her life, on the surface, was gilded with luxury and status. But beneath the polish lay the truth that Sophie was deeply unhappy. She hadn't always felt this way. When she first married Charles, he had been attentive, charming in his manner. But over the years, he grew distant, consumed by his work, his ambition, and the relentless demands of business. They shared a life, but not a bond. There were no meaningful conversations, no tender moments of companionship. It was as if they were two strangers occupying the same elegant home. It was at one of Aldridge's many charity galas where Sophie first met Daniel Mathis. He was everything Charles was: artistic, passionate, and full of life. Daniel was a writer, new to the city, and his reputation as a progressive thinker made him a captivating figure in the tight-knit social circles Sophie frequented. He had an air of mystery about him, and it drew Sophie in from the first moment they spoke. Their first conversations were innocuous, even innocent. They talked about art, literature, and the changing times. But over the weeks, as their meetings became more frequent, something dangerous began to form between them. Sophie found herself thinking of Daniel constantly. She loved how he listened to her, how he understood the frustrations she couldn't share with anyone else. Before long, their meetings became more intimate, taking place in secluded parks and empty café copyright far from the eyes of Aldridge's elite. One evening, after months of covert longing, Sophie found herself at Daniel's apartment. She had come under the pretense of discussing his latest manuscript, but they both knew there was more to their visit than words. The night unfolded in a wave of passion and guilt, and when Sophie finally left, her body hummed with excitement, but her mind screamed with the weight of what she had done. Weeks passed, and their affair deepened. They met in secret, wrapped in a cloak of forbidden desire. For Sophie, Daniel was a drug she couldn't quit. Even though every rendezvous left her feeling more trapped than liberated. The thrill was intoxicating, but it came with an undeniable danger. Sophie knew that if their affair was discovered, it would ruin not only her marriage but her reputation and standing in Aldridge. She would lose everything: her son, her home, and her place in society. One evening, while preparing for yet another secret meeting, Sophie looked at herself in the mirror. She barely recognized the woman staring back. The excitement she had once felt now felt hollow, replaced by anxiety. She loved Daniel, or at least she thought she did, but what kind of love was this? One that thrived in shadows, fed by lies, and driven by selfish desire. It wasn't just about Charles anymore. It was about her son, Alexander. He was only 10, but Sophie knew that children were perceptive. He had started asking questions. So why was she out so often? Why didn't she and Charles spend time together anymore? She couldn't lie to him forever. The weight of her choices was pressing down on her, threatening to crush everything she held dear. The turning point came unexpectedly. Sophie had planned to meet Daniel in the park that afternoon, but as she arrived, she saw someone else lurking nearby. It was Margaret Delaney, one of the most well-connected women in Aldridge. Margaret's sharp eyes caught Sophie's gaze, and in that moment, Sophie knew, Margaret had seen her, and if Margaret had seen, the whole city would soon know. Sophie's heart raced as she hurried back home. Panic set in. The life she had so carefully constructed, the fragile illusion of happiness, was about to come crashing down. That night, she lay awake, grappling with her conscience. What had started as a desire to feel alive had become a chain that bound her, threatening to destroy everything she had taken for granted. The next morning, Charles noticed her distress. Despite their emotional distance, he wasn't oblivious to her. He asked her what was wrong, his voice unusually soft, almost concerned. Sophie opened her mouth to lie, as she had so many times before, but something stopped her. She realized in that instant that she couldn't continue like this. The affair had brought her nothing but pain, guilt, and fear. She had betrayed not only her husband but herself. Sophie took a deep breath and, for the first time, told Charles the truth. She expected him to be furious, to throw her out, or to demand a divorce. Instead, he sat quietly, absorbing her words. His face was pale, and his hands trembled slightly, but he did not yell. When she finished, there was a long silence. "I suppose I'm not blameless in this," Charles said after a long pause, his voice heavy. "I should have been more present, a broken bar more of a husband." His words stung, not because they were harsh, but because they were true. Sophie realized that her affair with Daniel had been a desperate escape from the loneliness she had felt for years. But she had also allowed that loneliness to fester, rather than confronting it, or trying to salvage what was left of her marriage. In the days that followed, Sophie and Charles talked more than they had in years. The conversations were awkward and painful, but they were real. For the first time, they spoke openly about their disappointments, their regrets, and their hopes. They didn't make any grand promises to each other, but there was a sense that perhaps they could rebuild something, if not love, then at least an understanding. Sophie ended things with Daniel, though it was harder than she had anticipated. He was hurt, confused, and angry. But deep down, Sophie knew it was the right decision. Their relationship had been built on fantasy, not reality. It was a dangerous escape, not a solution to the problems she faced in her marriage. In the months that followed, Sophie worked on repairing her relationship with Charles and, more importantly, with herself. She had spent so much time looking for validation and excitement outside of her marriage that she had neglected her own inner growth. She began to pursue her interests again: art, music, and writing, things that had once brought her joy before the responsibilities of marriage and motherhood had taken over. Charles, too, made an effort to reconnect with her. They attended social events together, took trips, and even spent time with their son as a family. It wasn't a perfect marriage, but it was real, and that was something. Sophie never forgot her affair with Daniel. It became a part of her story, a reminder of the dangerous path she had once walked, but she had emerged from it stronger, more self-aware, and more committed to living authentically. She realized that true happiness could never come from someone else, yet it had to come from within. The darkness between her and Daniel had been seductive, but it had also been blinding. It took losing herself to find out what really mattered, and in the end, that was the only affair worth pursuing, the one with her own heart. The allure of forbidden desire can be intoxicating, but it often leads to self-destruction and pain. True fulfillment comes not from chasing fleeting passions but from confronting our inner struggles, cultivating self-awareness, and nurturing the relationships that truly matter. Affairs may offer a temporary escape, but they rarely provide the deep connection and understanding that come from honest communication and personal growth. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you enjoyed, then please like and share this video, and don't forget to subscribe our YouTube channel. Thank you for watching.